Hey everybody, Joseph Ross here again. I want to talk to you a little bit about primary versus secondary sources. This is foundational to the work that historians do, and I want to let you in on some of these secrets so that you'll understand the differences too. There are two types of sources, primary and secondary. Primary sources are first-hand accounts. They come from the time period that we're studying. Remember, our course looks at China, Japan, Korea, and Vietnam from the 1800s up to the present. So whatever time period we're looking at, primary sources come from that time period and they're first-hand accounts. So the people who wrote those accounts witnessed them themselves. The second type are secondary. Secondary sources are not first-hand accounts, they are second-hand accounts. They come from individuals who did not witness the event, they are writing about it after the fact. Most all of the time, these secondary sources come many years later. Think about the history books or the history articles you read, things that historians have written. Those are secondary sources. Those historians who are writing about China in the 1800s weren't alive back then. They're writing about it after the fact. Now, if you read through this page, you can see some of the pros and cons of each source. I just want to highlight some of them. Obviously, historians love primary sources. Primary sources come from the people who were alive at that time. So what better way to understand the past than to look at the sources left behind by people who lived during that time? That sounds great. There are some disadvantages. If you only look at one primary source from the past, that only provides a very limited point of view. You're only getting one source from one person, and that is very limiting. So primary sources are good. They tell us about what happened in the past from the people who lived then, but you've got to read a whole lot of primary sources to get a more balanced view. And that's what professional academic historians do. We read tons and tons and tons of primary sources so that we get a more well-rounded, balanced point of view. Secondary sources can be great as well. If you're interested in a topic, but you don't have time to research it all by yourself, go look at something a historian has read. The historian has already done a ton of research for you. So you can go and you can read an article or a chapter of a book from a historian, and you get wonderful analysis. There are some disadvantages to this. For example, you're still just getting one point of view from one person. Even though the historian has read dozens, maybe hundreds of primary sources, you're not getting a complete point of view. You're just getting one historian's point of view. And guess what? No two historians have the exact same point of view. So primary and secondary sources are very important. You need to understand the differences. There are pros and cons to each approach. But if you really want to understand anything, whether it's in the past or in the present, if it's a current event, I don't care. If you want to understand these things, you've got to read multiple accounts from different points of view to get a more well-rounded point of view. So that is primary versus secondary sources, and you'll need to understand those differences when you complete some of the big assignments in the course.